Hi, good evening all. I welcome you all for this very interesting session on IT security and compliance obligations, which is a mandate for today's all enterprises. Uh, uh, I specifically request each one of you to just hold this whole session till the end of this session. Thus, we have a lot of interesting things to offer to you as part of this session. Before that, I would also like to introduce about future calls who are actually planning this session. Future calls is basically into an SI consulting and networking business. We are majorly into 6 major portfolios that we focus on, and predominantly we have primary focus on voice and contact center. We do a lot of networking solutions. We are into information security. That's where the whole pitch is on today with all of you to discuss about. We are also into managed IT services. We are in cloud. We are a select partner for AWS, and we do a lot of shared services on CIO CISO services. That's very interesting subject that we are niche subject that we are in vertical that we specialized on. So without much delay, and we have a lot of people already joined in the sessions, I go ahead. I would like to introduce the key guest speaker, Mr. Jagan. Jagan is actually a veteran in this industry for almost some 3 decades, and he's been best practicing IT practice in terms of best practice. He was a CIO for AGS Health, and he's also known in this industry and an entrepreneur and future calls MD as well. So without much further delay, I would like to hand over the session to Mr. Jagan. But before that, I would definitely inform you that please hang on till till the end of this session, as you have a lot of interesting goodies to win by answering the quiz program that would come up at the end of this session. Looking forward to hear from Mr. Jagan. Mr. Jagan, it's all up to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vijay. And once again, I would like to welcome all of you. It's great that we are starting the actual session by 5:02 because of the great response, overwhelming response. We already have 60 people joining this session and it keeps increasing. Thank you for sparing your 1 hour valuable time. So I'll definitely make it a point to ensure that this 1 hour is interesting as well as useful and valuable to you. Okay, so that's the first promise. And of course, this is completely going to be a knowledge session where I will be sharing few of my experience based on my experience, few points which could be of definitely could be of interest to you. Okay, so first, before getting into the actual session, a little bit on the context setting. We may be wondering, or some of you may be wondering on 2 things. One, this subject looks a little bit odd and also coming from me. Some of you know me well. So I'm a hardcore technologist. So I don't have any legal background, neither I did anything on studies on legal, or I've not handled any legal portfolio. I'm a hardcore technologist. In fact, a very core tech enthusiast. So how am I just coming into something on security and IT compliance related topic? And of course, from there, like how would this be of any use to you? I know most of you here are from this industry, primarily IT leaders. So would it be of any interest to you? But I know looking at the interest, looking at the registration, we had about 200 registrations. Looking at the interest, people joining here. In fact, yesterday we had some trial session, and we had our own internal mock thinking that the session was on yesterday. So looking at the interest, I know for sure that all of you feel it is important, but let me also explain to you why I got into that, why we chose this topic and how could this be of use to you. Okay, so that's what is the first context setting. Then we will get into the core session. Okay, so it's not going to be just a quick few minutes of context setting. So why I chose this topic when we have multiple other core technical topics to discuss about. Primarily because I somehow got roped into this compliance. I have been, though I'm not a legal professional, I said I don't have a legal background, but I've been roped into compliance specifically on the IT compliance because I'm a core, I last 23 years or so. I'm working on ISMS and various other process excellence process. So when you look at it, ISMS or any process, this meeting the compliance requirements is a core. It's a starting point, I would say, in fact. So you design your processes based on certain inputs, and one of the primary input is in terms of meeting the compliance requirements. Okay, so that's how gotten into that. And incidentally, I had to chip in some time in I think 2010 for one of my ex-colleague who got into a very senior position in an MNC when they were setting up their India center. So I was looped in to resolve a very tricky challenge. At that time, the OSP guidelines, whatever, I don't know how many of you right now know, is used to be very, very tricky, very stringent, very confusing also. So I was roped in to see how to go about it. It's a tricky challenge. So I gave some technical ideas, and that's how then I, for a couple of years later, I become something like an OSP specialist. Though I have no legal background, then even in fact, some of the jobs I even refused where it is just a interpretation or just some licensing. I'm not a licensing specialist. It's more just a technical interpretation or technical thing of how we can comply better. So that is why I roped into. And right now, in fact, currently I do consulting for some organizations, but I have been I always be very choosy in terms of getting into this area. Some organizations where they feel that the compliance is the culture, compliance is a core requirement. So I do consult for some organizations in terms of IT and security compliance requirements. Okay, so that is how I got into it. And why would it be of any interest? I said it's going to be very useful to you also. Why would it be of any interest to you? Because I feel, as I given in the introduction in the webinar, when I work with some of my clients or contacts, I find that it's two extremes. One extreme is in terms of to due credit to the legal professionals here, being very paranoid, and then or some consultant very paranoid, and then being very thing that this is not possible, this has to be done, etc., etc. At the same time, another extreme, predominantly core technical professionals who do not give that much of an importance or weightage in terms of understanding what is the legal requirement and see how do we build our systems and processes in such a way that we are able to meet the legal requirements. Whether we like it or we don't like it, it is a obligation for all of us to comply to whatever the legal requirement, whether we feel the requirement is correct or whether we feel that the requirement is something frivolous. We don't have a choice. Okay, we have to if you have to go on the road, we have to meet the comply and oblige the traffic rules. So similarly, if you have to do a business, if you have to make our enterprises wherever we are working great, then we have to meet the legal requirements, it's a no choice. Okay, it's a given thing. But as I said, most of the IT professionals, when I see, they feel that, oh, it's not my cup of tea or it's not my botheration. It's a legal requirement, legal department. Why can't they look into that? But the problem is here, there is no like a centralized repository or compendium, unfortunately, for all the required legal requirements to be met. Okay, so definitely many of the legal professionals or corporate affairs, they wouldn't even know like what are the legal requirements applicable and legal requirements required. See, to that extent only you would all know there is a small introduction given before even this webinar that there are we have multiple legal requirements, compliance requirements, you can say statutory requirements and also regulatory requirements. There is a final difference between statutory requirements and regulatory requirements. Okay, the regulatory requirements, there are too many regulatory requirements, and it is basically regulatory requirements not like enacted as an act by parliament like whatever we have seen in DPTA, but requirements specific to particular authorities or agencies. Okay, so it's not possible to have a centralized repository or compendium of all applicable requirements. That is why, in fact, most of, as I said, most of your many of your ISO requirement will say the first step is to explore and understand what are the applicable. That itself is the first task. Okay, to that extent, it is definitely a key requirement that all the IT professionals here to understand what are the legal requirements applicable to the business first step, so that we can see whether they're able to meet the requirements or if not meeting the requirements, what needs to be done to meet the requirements. Okay, so that's the context in which this session has been introduced. So I will now pick up few important applicable legal requirements in India for IT and information security so that we can discuss more on that. Okay, so that's the context. We'll have a question and answer session. Only thing is I will request you to keep your questions definitely whatever, as I said, I'm not a legal professional, but whatever my understanding based on my experience, I will try to answer your queries. So we'll keep it ready, keep it parked for the end of the session because I want to go with the flow and let us finish it so that you will have, because some of the questions could be answered automatically during the session itself. Okay, so then, but meanwhile, you can keep posting the questions on your chat window. So in case you want to fire it immediately so that you don't forget it. Okay, don't worry, we would have enough time for answering a few questions. Okay, so I will first share. Meanwhile, I see the participant list. It kept increasing rapidly and then suddenly stopped at around 93, 95. So I thought wait for another 5 to cross the century, but fortunately it stopped at 95. Okay, sure. So what is going to be covered? As I said, I don't even know whether this is the complete list you should be. I'm not definitely committing that if you comply to all of this, that is enough. First of all, I'm going to only cover what is relevant to IT and information security. As I said, there's not a legal section where the company, what are the legal requirements for a company. It's only what a legal requirement an IT leader should be aware of, should comply to. Okay, so from that perspective, I have chosen 7 here. Some of them are statutory, some of them are regulatory, as I mentioned. Okay, first of all, it's only going to be related to IT and InfoSec, and second, only India. Okay, some of you in your business would need to manage certain international regulatory requirements as well. Though I am familiar with some of the international regulatory requirements, two reasons I'm not bringing here, because the focus is basically the requirements applicable in India. Okay. And second is we may not even have time. This is not a training session. We have some time, so we will do justice for whatever we are taking it. Okay. So I've chosen 7. As I said again, once again, I'm repeating that I don't even know. I'm not. I can't give you promise that this is the end of it, even within Indian regulations, as far as IT and InfoSec is concerned. There could be something more also. This is more common, more relevant, more important as far as IT and InfoSec is concerned. So, which the list being ITI Act 2000 and 2006 amendment and 2008. So it has become Information Technology Amendment Act ITIA called 2008. And there is one more thing called Information Technology Reasonable Security Practices, etc. 2011. But it is completely replaced now. We will come into that. The most tricky part is there is something called certain directions, which is a regulatory requirement, not a statutory requirement, but it's still a legal requirement to comply to. And that is where I find most of the non-compliance as well. Okay, or lack of awareness is I'm finding it in terms of certain as well as e-waste management rules, because IT is the primary input for e-waste management, which is also a requirement. And there's one thing, something interesting. I don't know how many of you already know this. It has become a requirement from this financial year. There is one requirement as far as your accounting system, which has come from an amendment in companies accounts amendment rule. Okay. So you may be wondering how I'm tracking this thing. It is possible to track it. As I said, I'm not a legal professional, but still somehow I try to manage to keep the thing and track. And of course, the OSP guidelines, which is where, as I said, at one point in time, I was, whether I wanted it, did not want it by design or incidental, been known as a OSP specialist or consultant. And of course, the new baby in the circuit and the most talked about is digital personal data protection. As I said, that is where it triggered my point. At some point in time, after the Digital Personal Data Protection Act has been announced, there's so many webinars going around, so many discussions going around, intricacies of Personal Data Protection Act, whether this is allowed, whether that is allowed. It made me to wonder why everyone is talking only about Digital Personal Data Protection Act as if nothing else to comply to. Okay, so that is where this, but I'm including that also for a discussion point here. Okay, so this is where no, okay, so quickly in terms of coverage, starting with OSP guidelines, it used to be very, very stringent, very, I would say, restrictive, very restrictive practice in terms of OSP for business users. It has been largely streamlined, I would say, very greatly streamlined, great extent. It has been simplified and streamlined after COVID by June 2021, which is supersede all the earlier previous known requirements. So what we are now is only that 5 pages of requirements released in June 2021. Information Technology Act amendments in 2006 and 2008. It stopped there, and it's going to be replaced by Digital India Act when it comes through. We don't know when will it come through, but until then, what we need to be bothering about is Information Technology Act. Even the draft of the Digital India Act, you will know that it has not been published yet. Okay, e-waste management, as I said, many people, whether we know or didn't know, I see even big companies, they don't bother about the e-waste management rule, but it's still a requirement to comply to. Certain guidelines, April 2022, famous or infamous certain guidelines, which went into a lot of discussion, hot discussions, but still there. It needs to comply to. And Companies Amendment Rule 2021, though it says 2021, it was released in 2021, but 2 times it has been deferred And finally, it is made applicable from April 1, 2023. That is what we are going to see. And then Data Protection Act. Okay, so first starting with the ITI Act. Okay, so if you have any questions, you can keep posting in the chat window. But if you want to somehow get it clarified, then only move forward, you raise your hands. Okay, so Information Technology, we'll call it the Amendment Act, first 2000 and then Amendment Act 2008. Applicability, it's predominantly all citizens of India, but of course, companies has also had an indirect obligation. Many people, whenever I discussed also, ITI Act is for individuals, so why should I be bothered about that? And unfortunately, that's a wrong perception. Companies have an indirect obligation also under ITI Act. Currently, it is felt to be very basic because the objective of ITI Act when it came in 2000 is to legalize, make provisions, legal provisions that contract can be made digital. Basically, digital signature, digital certificate, that was the focus of the ITI Act. More than any cyber, it is not a cyber crime act. Okay, it's not a cyber regulation like what you have cyber regulation in some countries. Okay, that is why the government is now trying to supersede with the Digital India Act. When Digital India Act comes, the ITI Act would be replaced. That is the objective. That's the expectation. As I said, the primary objective of ITI Act is not to control, though there are certain provisions in ITI Act to criminalize and then enforcement and penalties for some data thefts and data crimes. It is also included. But the primary objective of ITI Act when it was brought in 2000 is to legalize digital transaction and prevent certain cyber related, because when you legalize a digital transaction, you have to take care of cyber related crimes. That is what is the objective. What are all the compliance requirements for the companies? I just picked out, it is some, the law is some 83 sections or something like that, but I just picked out maybe what other things could be relevant to companies. Regulatory provision for the use of digital signature, that is what is made. So we also, Digital Act covers that the digital signature shall be taken only from a certifying authority authorized by controller of certifying authorities in India. There is a authority set up by the government, Indian government, that called controller of certifying authorities. Only those CAs, certifying authorities who are authorized and approved by controller of certifying authorities, so you can take digital signatures. Okay, so otherwise your digital transaction is not valid. So that is one maybe need to be aware of. Who are all the authorized? You can go and check in the website of Controller of Certifying Authorities, India. It will have a list of CAs authorized by the agency. Okay. Subscriber shall exercise reasonable care to retain the control of private keys of the digital certificates and take all steps to prevent disclosure. It's a requirement. So as an organization, is an organization using digital signatures of signatories or key leadership using digital signature. It's also a requirement as per ITI Act that the organization should take reasonable care to ensure that the private keys, it's like managing your password safely. Private keys are managed properly and not left with any discipline or indiscipline that it could be disclosed. Okay. So what are all the policies you can do? This is, in fact, it is covered in even in ISO 27001 as one of the class that what is your controls for private keys and key management. So that is what exactly is included in your Information Technology Act. To that extent, it is also a requirement to, it's an obligation, though it's not directly mentioned, but prevent disclosure, sufficient steps to be taken is included. Okay. Obligation to communicate to the certifying authority if there is a compromise. If you feel that there is a compromise, it's an obligation for any organization to communicate to the certifying authority of the compromise. Okay, so that it is not misused by someone. 43A section is a very famous in this, which what's the first step. It came in 2008, I think, not in the original 2000. So 43A is what the one which first came in terms of sensitive data, indirectly like a personal data, how to put some safeguards in terms of dealing with personal data. Very primitive Data Protection Act, which has been now completely replaced by a more detailed Data Protection Act, which is not there now. Okay. Obligation to furnish any document, return or report to the controller or the certifying authority. Controller means controller of certifying authority or the certifying authority which has given you the certificate. If they want, it has to be responded to. There is an obligation as per the Act. And there is no direct obligation. Direct obligation is for the individuals, but because it's mentioned in the Act, there is an indirect obligation to organizations to ensure that their cyber resources, your internet, your email, are not misused. Okay, say used or misused by even our own staff or outsiders to engage in any cyber crime, including terrorism related communication or threats, or even prevent what you call regulated content, such as something like a pornography. Or there is a big list there. So essentially, why is it applicable to organizations, you may ask? Okay, because your cyber resources are used, and if there is a situation comes, it is traced that it has been from your organization's internet or email, then the expectation is that you should be able to trace the wireless connection or email or firewall logs to trace the crime to who would have committed the crime. That level of indirect obligation is there on the organization. Essentially means you should have logs, you should have mechanism to trace, which is then not directly mentioned for an organization, but it's an indirect obligation for organization. You cannot say at that time that I do not have logs, or I don't even collect any thing. We don't have a provision mechanism to trace who has sent it. We just open out, anybody can come in and anybody can send any terrorism email. So it will not be accepted. Okay. Rights of the central or state government to intercept, it has to be, if at all there is a request, it has to be obliged to only when there is a request. If there is a contravention to ITI Act by a company, all persons responsible and in charge at the time of contravention was committed is liable. Contravention is something like even something like somebody was able to use and it has been traced back to your internet or even email. If you are not able to the thing, then unless the director or leadership proves that due diligence is exercised, they are liable. Okay, they are legally bound to answer. Okay, answerable. Okay, that is the important provision you need to know. So that means you should put in place due diligence to ensure that you do not be into that position anytime. Okay, so the next one is information technology, reasonable security practices and procedures, and sensitive. The name itself is a big one. Okay, it will take time. So, but the point is, it is a basic, as I said, first set of rules to protect personal data when it is processed or sensitive data when it is processed. It gives a list of what is personal data, what is sensitive data, etc., etc. But right now it is much more detail is included in the Data Protection Act. So it is become irrelevant or no longer applicable. But one good interesting thing I just wanted to highlight here is that this particular one, though many would not even know that, I happened to get into that depth and then look at it. I have been telling some of my clients for a quite long time this is there. Because many people used to tell me India doesn't have a Data Protection Act. India doesn't have a Data Protection Act. India doesn't have a detailed Data Protection Act like a GDPR, but there is an act which is need to oblige to, because that said reasonable security practices to be implemented, and reasonable practices includes certification for ISO 27001. It is specifically included here. Unfortunately, this is not there in Data Protection Act. We will come to that later. This is specifically mentioned in the We call it as ITR shortly, Information Technology Reasonable Security Practices Act. The most famous or infamous certain directions, suddenly certain came out with a list of directions. Everyone need to comply to that. There are a lot of hue and cry. Some companies, VPN providers said, no, we cannot comply. Then the minister said, if you cannot comply, you can very well go out of India. Some have even chosen to quit. I forgot the name. One or two VPN providers say, if that is the case, we don't want to do business in India. They quit India business also. So it's such a level of the thing, but still I find that many are not even aware or not even put in place the requirements, but this is the regulatory requirements. Okay. If it is not obliged, it's not complying, certain has an authority to enforce penalties. Okay, though it is not mentioned, enforcement and penalties are not included in the direction, but they have the authority to enforce. Okay, so don't think that okay, some stupid thing, something has come, so we don't have to bother about it. Because in one of my client, there is one requirement. Okay, we'll come to that when I come to that point. So applicability is big list is there, but body corporate, which is what is essentially the term for enterprise companies in India, whether it is SME, MSME, or big enterprise, doesn't matter. Everyone comes under body corporate, have to comply to that. So meaning even SME should comply. Okay, no exemption given for SMEs or MSMEs from certain directions. How would an SME comply to such a stringent requirement? I don't know. No answer, because it is very specifically no exemption given in terms of the size. It means it applies to all companies. Okay. So first four, there are six, I think, compliance requirement. First four only applicable to body corporate, which is essentially the companies, enterprise companies. The other two, the last two, are applicable to the service providers. So we'll skip that for want of time. And also, I'm not an expert. So my thing as a CIO, what we need to, that is what is my expertise or focus always. Okay, what are those four requirements? One is, first one, all companies should report their SPOC, who is the point of contact for cybersecurity incident. You should report in advance. It's not, some people think that, when we never had any incident, so why do we bother? But certain very specifically stated in the directions that you need to report to us who is your point of contact, so that in case anything required, we need to know information, we will be able to approach. Okay, it has to be sent in a particular format, which they have given in the directions, and then email to certain. I have done it for some clients, for my own company also. They never respond. They never acknowledge, saying that, oh, okay, we acknowledge, this is your acknowledgement number. Nothing of that sort. I have never heard about it. But still, you have to comply to that. So how would you prove that you are complied to that? I don't know, maybe an email, and save that email and keep it that I have sent an email. I don't know, that certain is not mentioned, but there is no response. There is no acknowledgement would come from certain. Okay, that's a different matter here. I don't know why they do not send. When they put a requirement legal, they should be sending an acknowledgement. Yes, we received it. Okay. And they don't do that. They never do that. Okay, it's only a one-sided thing always. Okay, so with due respect to certain. Second requirement, so it says 3. Okay, second requirement, all your ICT systems. Again, what is the definition of ICT system is not there. Okay, should have clock synchronization. I know, I can understand why certain wants this, because if there is an incident, they need to have the logs, they need to have the ability to go through the logs and retrace what has happened. Okay, if that has to happen, the clock source should be proper. We know that I have this problem even within the organization. If the clock is not correct, it is very difficult to reconstruct the forensic. Okay, so clock synchronization should be mandatorily enabled, but they initially put it like it should be synced with only NIC or NPL's clock, which are all Indian clock sources. but then they have sort of little bit diluted that and then or made it little easy. Say that synchronization with any clock source which is traceable to NPL or NIC. I don't know what is the traceability. How do you check? I don't even know. How do we check? I am synchronizing with this particular clock source to check whether that is traceable to NIC or NPL. I don't know, but I would think as long as you are to an external standard clock source, they even said it could be outside India clock source also. Time zone, outside time zone is also okay. As long as you are able to sync to a clock source, it is fine. ICT system, there is no definition what amounts to IT system, but I would think at least wherever your internet facing systems, which is your firewalls or any internet facing servers, hosts, public with the public IP, wherever the internet facing. Okay, so that at least mandatory first we can say. Okay. Then the third requirement is shall mandatorily report if there is a cyber incident. They have given the list of cyber incidents which could be categorized as cyber incident. Within 6 hours of noticing such incident or being brought to notice, that is a legal language. How do you make it? What is the definition of that? It's a little tricky, tough one. But essentially, the 6 hours, there's a lot of hue and cry. Is it possible that 6 hours? In the first 6 hours, would you bother about how do you, what is the problem? What is the communication? Would you bother about that? Or would you bother about certain reporting to certain? But certain says that this is my priority, so you bother about it and report it within 6 hours. Here is what I said. One of the client, I said there was an incident and I said that there is a requirement certain, please report it. But by the time they came to me itself 2 days later, so they did it on the 3rd day. Certain did not do anything to help a company for with the incident, but they promptly sent an email that why can't we take show cause notice because you did not meet the 6 hours deadline given by us. You reported after 2 days, sir. A little ridiculous, but that is possible. So keep in mind that there is a requirement that within 6 hours you have to report. Okay. And the other one is what is again more critical thing. How many of us are complying to that? Shall mandatorily enable logs of the IT system. In the first place, how many companies have a mechanism to collect the logs, store the logs? Second, it says should be there for a period of rolling period of 180 days, meaning minimum 180 days from today, it has to be available. You cannot say that I don't have a log because wherever I had an opportunity to work with 2 ransomware incident in terms of helping the clients with ransomware resolution, remediation, etc. In both the cases, even reasonably sized company, not even an SME, but logs are there not more than 10 days a week. It is not collected, stored, etc. But certain wouldn't bother about it. How many people would be able to put it? How many companies have the mechanism? They don't care. It's a requirement that I need to have the log. I need to have the log. 180 days should be there. And the most important is shall be maintained within Indian jurisdiction. Even if you are collecting, some MNCs have this problem, tough challenge that they have an entire mechanism. They have the logs, 180 days logs, everything is logged. Very detailed procedure, but it is kept outside India. But that is also not compliant because there is a requirement which stated that it has to be in Indian jurisdiction. Certain wants it. Why do they want it? I don't know. Okay, don't ask me. Okay, so I'm not the representative of certain here. So e-waste management rules, which is again, I see when big companies, they don't bother. Okay, it used to be little tougher, but luckily 2022 they came out with a e-waste management rule amendment in which they had removed all the requirements for companies, which is bulk consumers. They call it as a bulk consumers. E-waste is primarily, that electronic waste because it's a polluting thing to control the electronic waste being misused. okay, pollute the society. So it's a social obligation as well, leave alone it's a regulatory obligation. It's a social obligation for companies, for IT leaders. Okay, so what it's used to state, you need to keep a register, you need to do some form filing, you need to do some form 2, form 3 annual returns, like your income tax returns, you have to file a return to your pollution control board. Even big companies have never done that. I have seen it, but there is a requirement was there. Luckily, they removed it by an amendment in 2022 September that you don't now need to do filing, register, all those things are removed. The only requirement now for companies, because they also have requirement for manufacturers, the rewaste collectors called the refurbishers, that are stringent requirements are there. You need to follow this, you need to follow that. We're not getting to that. Okay. For companies as you and me, what is required is only to ensure that the e-waste is given only to a refurbisher with authorized by any one of the state pollution control board. Any one of the state pollution control board is okay. So it cannot be given to whatever your rack pickers and what is the name there? I forgot the name. So you cannot give it to anyone. You have to give it only to a refurbisher who is authorized. You have to verify that certificate, get a acceptance that I have collected it. I'm so and so, get an acknowledgement. Then only the e-waste can be disposed. That is the only requirement. Who need to comply to that? Any company who at any point in time in that financial year used 1,000, more than 1,000 plus listed electrical and electronic items. Doesn't mean 1,000 computers, 1,000 desktop laptops, LED lamps are all not included. Roughly, you can take 1,000 seats means you have to definitely meet the e-waste requirement. Okay. This is one, as I said, tricky, newer, very new requirement. It states that the 2021 companies amendment rules accounts, companies accounts amendments rule, but it was first released in 2021 in 24th March, but 2 times it is extended, probably because of requests from companies. It is very difficult and tough. Very one of the MNC with whom I'm working with, we know that we have been discussing about it for last 1 year, but it's very, very expensive for us to put these safeguards to meet this requirement. Unfortunately, this year they said no more waiting. They have enforced it from 1st April 2023. So it's already applicable from 1st April 2023. It's a newest requirement now. So what is the requirement? Very tough requirement. That's the reason I put it here also under IT. Shall use only such accounting software which has a future of audit trail. You need to have a government wants that audit trail should be there. Not only that, it also states that you should ensure that audit trail cannot be disabled. Suddenly, someone from accounts team cannot disable it, do something and then enable it back, which is a violation of Indian rules. So it should be that it is forced, enforced. Don't think that it's all difficult, because your auditor, statutory auditor, as part of your audit, they have to give an declaration that they have verified and they have found that the audit trails are there and they have not been disabled. So auditor, on behalf of you, your auditor has to declare. And there is an obligation to the company directors also. Okay, let's not get into that, but say that the audit trail has to be mandatory and has to be always on. Okay. Second requirement, books of account to be preserved for a minimum period of 8 years. Means audit trails have to be stored and kept for 8 years from April 1, 2023. Okay, you cannot delete the audit trails. Okay, backup of the books of the third one is what is very, very tricky for some companies, of course, especially some MNCs who have globally centralized their accounting. Backup of the books of accounts and other books and papers of the company maintained in electronic mode, including at a place. This is a verbatim what is there in the law. At a place outside India, if any, if it is outside India, if it is inside India, no problem. If it is posted outside India, shall be kept in servers physically located in India on a daily basis. Earlier also this was there, but they had not had the word called daily basis. Now they are stating that your backup copy should be there in servers which are there in India, hosted in India. On a daily basis, data should be there in the servers. So if there is a problem, the government wants to trace it back, you should be able to show it in an Indian server with the minimum 24 hours RPO. That's all allowed. You should be able to show it here. Okay. OSP guidelines. Okay, we'll quickly. Okay, we may not have time. It was used to be very tough, as I said, post-COVID, because of the work from home requirement. They have relaxed lots of things. They kept on giving an incremental thing. And then finally, they said one in June 2021, removing all tough things and made it very, very simplified. Now there is a feeling that only thing I wanted to put it, oh, okay, OSP itself is not there. There is nothing to comply to, there is nothing. That is not the case. So only that largely simplified, but still there are obligations there. What are those obligations? Some interesting obligations is what is heavily misused by some companies also, vendors, I would say. Non-voice BPO services removed. Earlier, it's very stupid. Then done it very correctly that even some data BPOs should follow OSP, take license. I don't know why they don't even use any of the telecom. So why would, but still it was there. Now it is removed. They don't have to bother. They don't even come under this. Okay. Work from home simplified. You can even use your broadband from home and connect it to your corporate telephony and make calls, receive calls. It's very specifically given for work from home. Okay. The only problem is because this has been allowed and it is allowed only under work from home, some companies, some vendors are specifically misusing, saying that no, I had a very tough argument with some vendors also. No, why are you saying so? They have already removed, you are saying wrong. I said nothing like that. Go on, tell me where it is stated. It is stated only for work from home, that you can use internet and access your corporate telecom resources. From office, you cannot use internet and access your telecom, which is still not allowed in India. Even for OSPs, it is not allowed. Okay, it's a misconception. All your cloud telephony, etc. will come to that. It is primarily allowed given for work from home. Okay, cloud telephony at India is included in OSP. Means can be used only by non-voice BPO services. Others cannot use cloud telephony. Can be given only by an authorized TSP, telecom service provider. There are many companies. They say, what is your authorization to give cloud telephony? No, we are a VNO service provider. There is nowhere given. Said, show me where it is said that the VNO service provider can provide cloud telephony. Nowhere it is there. Which means only a TSP can tell. TSP is a full suite of telecom service provider. Okay, only TSP can provide cloud telephony services. Okay, they're not TSP, but they're still giving it. Of course, you also don't have to be bothered, but you have to keep in mind that there is a risk that it is a non-compliant service. Okay. Other one important point is CDR, UDR, system log, etc. etc. CDR is billing report, user data report, system logs of that telephony system, configuration of the system, etc. should be taken and stored in India. Again, there is one requirement. There are some companies, MNCs, who told me, no, it is difficult to follow. We have to make millions of dollars, but DOT will not be bothered. They stated that it has to be stored in India. So I even suggested somebody at least take a backup like your earlier case. At least daily basis, ensure that take a backup and keep it somewhere in India. At least you can show that I have an intention to oblige. Okay. It doesn't say that the backup is allowed, but states that the config shall be taken and stored in India in one of the India center for a period of 1 year should be there. and the timing of the report should be in ISP only. Voice traffic has to be routed through MPLS, IPLC, NPLC. Internet is not allowed. Okay, still that is what I said. Toll bypass is not allowed. Toll bypass meaning putting your switched calls, your PSTN calls through private network is not allowed. Okay, within India or outside India, it is not allowed. The last is that digital personal data protection. Right? Okay, I know you would have, so we'll not get into that. This alone is a 1 hour topic, but we don't have time also. Consider diluted compared to GDPR. GDPR is considered as the master piece of legislation on personal data protection. Large scale, it is diluted, is what I would also think. Qualification, what is amounting to significant data fiduciary is not defined. Government simply left it that government will notify who is significant data. So they can make it a significant data fiduciary. Okay, data in non-digital, in GDPR and all, there is a qualification is there. If you are handling this kind of categories of data, this amount of data, etc., some qualification, it is not there in India law. Okay, data in non-digital form and not digitized removed from the ambit of DPDPA, meaning only applicable for digital data. If it is in paper form, your visitor register, you put it in the registers, write it in your reception, that need not be protected. That can be given to anybody. Anybody can take out photocopy of it and do anything they want. Essentially, don't pin me, but that is what it says. If it is if it is in non-digital form and subsequently also it is not entered back into any Excel sheet or something, then you don't have to bother about the DPDPA for that. Okay. New concept of consent manager, which is not very clear, but something which is very innovative looks like. That is what people say, which is not there in GDPR and or other thing. There's something called consent managers have been introduced. Okay, what is the requirement? It's a big requirement. As I said, it's a 1 hour discussion. We'll quickly run through. Many of you would have already gone through. Otherwise, we can conduct one more webinar on DPDPA. I have not tried it because there are so many people who have conducted webinars on DPDPA, so many posts, documents floating around. So no need. But quickly, all types of personal data will be governed by the law. Okay, no specific exemption for any category, which means any company would have personal data of employees. So they have not given any exemption that if it is employees, don't have to bother about DPDPA. So essentially, any company have to take note of DPDPA, Data Protection Act, because you would minimum have some companies say, no, we do not handle any personal data. As you have employees, you collect employees profiles to store it. Yeah, of course, we can't do it otherwise. You have to process the salary. Okay, then you definitely come under the ambit of DPDPA. Okay, personal data protection. Visitors, many people have the visitor management system. They're collecting the data. Some people even collect signatures, biometric of visitors. Without mobile number, no company allows visitor inside. We happily give a mobile number. Now all those companies have to critically look at their visitor management systems, because that is also comes under the ambit of, unless it is just noted down in a physical register, then they don't have to bother. Okay, not specific on technical, it just simply mentioned in 2 sections that data fiduciary should implement appropriate technical measures. What does that mean? Where it is very ambiguous. Okay. Notice to the data protection has to be given in English or any language specified in 8th schedule of the Constitution. I mentioned it because the notice for taking consent and the notice for obliging to the rights of the data principal has to be given if the data principal wants, meaning the data owner wants it in say some Bhojpuri, if it is there in the 8th schedule of the Constitution as an Indian language, you have to give the notice in Bhojpuri only. Okay, that is what Data Protection Act says. How is it possible? How would you write your application? That's a different question that need to be looked into. Cross-border data transfer, there are a lot of hullabaloo about it from the last previous version of the Data Protection Act has been removed now. it said it suggested completely stopping the cross-border data transfer. Now it has been diluted. So the government simply mentioned that government will come back and notify which are all the countries not eligible for cross-border transfer. As long as you do limit that and do it with any other country, it is okay. That is what it states. Okay. Now, as a sample, just as a sample, so you would have seen in our first initially when we put the registration link, we did not put it, but subsequently we have added the notice and consent. So something like that is what is the first step of the Data Protection Act. For one aspect of the compliance. See, you have to state what purpose, who is the contact person for any issues, and take a consent and store the consent. Now, this language has to be in any language allowed in Constitution, 8th schedule. That I don't know. I cannot comment. Okay, how? Okay, now quiz time. 5 minutes will take. I will share, as we mentioned, we have a quiz and we have prizes also. So I will share the quiz link for the quiz in the chat window and maybe wait for 5 minutes. After that, we will take the questions. We have almost completed the session. I'll share it in the thing. You can attempt it. Just the 5 questions. Hope you received it in the chat window. Just 5 questions, multiple choice questions, and from mostly only from whatever we have covered today. So you can attempt it, and first 3 fastest and all correct, 5 only, multiple choice. Doesn't take more than 5 minutes. You can, your time starts now. You can attempt it. So EL from which recalls is here, so he will collect it. He will ensure that he'll evaluate and probably announce the winners, etc. Okay, first prize, first all correct answers would get a copy of. I written 3 books, copy of all 3 books. Okay. In case you already have it, some of you I've already given. In case you already have it, of course, you can donate it to a friend, one of your friends. After all, it's good books. Okay. So don't worry. For that matter, don't say that I don't want to, because I already have your books. Please, quite fun. So, okay. So now. Okay, so if time starts now, we'll just leave for 5 minutes. Meanwhile, if anybody, any of you have some questions, you can start posting it in the chat box here, the chat window. Okay, so far no questions. If some of you have any question, you can start posting it. If I'm not able to understand the question, then we'll take you on audio video. Promise we are closing it by 6 o'clock, only question and answer sessions. Hope you're able to get the form for the quiz. If there is any difficulty, you can raise your hand. In getting your quiz page, you can raise your hand. EL will immediately look into that and correct it. EL, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Murugan. You have some question. Okay, I can even, can you put it on the Okay, I didn't get quiz page. Let me see. Let me click it. This is the quiz page. Hope you are able to see my screen. This is the quiz page. You have to give your name, email. This name and email, you are collecting it. Again, Data Protection Act requirement. Only to ensure that if you are a winner, to send it to you. Only for that purpose. Okay, we are taking the name and email. We'll contact you through email. Murugan, yeah, Murugan, can you? Yeah, I will even allow your mic. Yeah, Murugan, yes, Murugan, you can. I opened your mic.
Sir, desktop, some laptops, minimum ADS, minimum ADS or above.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you properly.
Sir, desktop and laptop, ADS above working or desktop.
Are you saying the life period of desktop and laptop?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No, there is no restriction, no e-waste. You're saying from e-waste perspective that you
Yes,
can
sir.
use it any number of years. E-waste doesn't put any restriction. But once you decide you have to junk it, once you decide you don't want to use it, you are junking it, then you have to give it only to an authorized e-waste collector called a refurbisher.
Okay.
There is no restriction. You can use it for 15 years also if you want, no problem.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
That is what is the question. No such restriction. Okay. Somebody said they're not able to. Are you able to get the quiz page?
There is one more question in the Q&A session, sir. It says that can we integrate the PBX with MS Team call?
Sorry, can we integrate?
Can we integrate the PBX with MS Team call?
Good question. PBX with MS Teams call. Okay. In the first place, your MS Teams using PSTN itself has to look into deeply because Microsoft is not an authorized TSP. Microsoft is eligible to provide telephony services anywhere they're authorized, equipped, etc. But in India, Microsoft is not an TSP. So directly, Microsoft is not authorized to provide telephony services in India, meaning your PSTN calls, etc. They're not authorized to provide Microsoft. It can be done if the Teams is provided by one of the authorized TSP. Like Microsoft Teams is can be provided by one of the CSP like TC, Tata Communication or any authorized TSP, because as long as it is provided through a TSP, then it is allowed. Now, integrating PBX with Teams, you need to ensure that the toll bypass is not there. As long as toll bypass is not there, it is okay. Toll bypass is like a local PSTN in India. PSTN should not be bridged by Teams to make outside calls. That is the requirement. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
So hope Manikam, I think it is answered. Your query is answered. Is there any question and answer sessions? People can put their chats, the chat box window as well.
Yeah, outside call meaning India toll call. From your home or outside, you should not be in a position to reach a corporate network. and use the corporate networks, private network, and make an international call. That will become like a bridging, which is still not allowed. Bridging India PSTN with the external world. Okay. Hope many of you completed your quiz. Yeah. Thank you. Many of you completed your quiz. There's still few more slides. We just took an stop in between. Okay. Still few more. Many of you have completed your quiz.
Sorry, I have received 39 entries, sir. Yes. 39
Okay,
members have
super.
completed the quiz.
Yeah, only 39 is interested in books.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
That is fine. Okay, so as I said, the first prize we'll announce it. First prize would be all 3 books. These are the 3 books written by me. And second prize will be the 2 books, the last 2 books, and the third prize will be COVID-21, which is the latest book. Okay, also would like to take a few minutes of your time to say that it's only marketing. At least you should give us that privilege to inform you that we'll be having, and this is a little bit of, you can say, precursor to the training. This is a virtual training, ISO 27001 2022, the new version, new standard virtual training, lead implementer training. We planned it in August, but because many customers requested that that's not the ideal time, we postponed it to 13th to 16th September. It's a 4 days training. So it's with a certificate. It's with a lot of industry relevant case studies, templates, exercises, etc. That is a highlight here compared to any other ISO 27000. This is not any accredited training because we have our own training agenda scheme. So this is going to be the training agenda. If any of you are interested or you want to nominate anybody from your team, it will definitely be a very interesting and useful exercise. You can do that. So this is what is the
page for. I'll put the page for registration also in the chat window. Maybe EL, can you just post the page for registration in the chat window?
Sure, sir. Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the. I'm not able to. Okay. So can you post it? I'm not able to post it. You can post it in the chat window. Okay. So.
Sure, sir. Yeah.
Okay. So this is what is the training. Hope you are able to see the screen. It's just 15,000 rupees. Very attractive, right? And 13, 14, 15, 16, 4 days training. Okay. So if interested, please register in this link. Okay. And quiz results will be posted in our LinkedIn page. EL just put our LinkedIn page also in the chat window. If you want to see the results by 7 p.m., we'll be able to post it. Okay. So this is just a last one. Recently, as I said, I had the opportunity to work on some ransomware incidents in terms of analysis, remediation, etc. So based on the knowledge, we worked out a model which analyzes based on this experience, looked at all the where possible entry points through which the attack comes. And basically, these are all not one-day attacks. They're all people are there in the system for quite long time, and then they decide to attack. So all the entry points and all the attack vectors and how the impact can be minimized, or so we have developed a model in terms of this thing. This is our proprietary model. So which also I'll do one thing. I will share this material and also all the 7 ads. I will share it, and then EL will email you the link. You can even download this presentation and also the 7 BEAR acts also. Okay. Whatever we have covered today, the BEAR act, I will share it. So Vijay already mentioned just 2 minutes. I wouldn't take more than that. voice and contact solutions, we are a partner for Avaya. We're a big partner for Matrix on the telephony. Altitude is an international call center system. We are a preferred partner. We have a big expertise on that. On the networking front, we do turnkey networking services, includes switching, routing, firewall, etc. We do on various OEMs on that. Security, we do security assessments, security services, as I said, ransomware protection services, recovery and remediation also we do now. And we also do security products, including your endpoint security, your assessments, tools, etc. we deal with. Managed IT services, we provide on-site support of various expertise areas. Cloud computing, AWS, we are a select partner. Azure, we are a registered partner. And in terms of services, we do the VAPT services, we do ITGC assessments. That is where even your compliance, everything comes in also. ITGC, we also do compliance assessment for some clients. And ISO 27001 implementation, training, audit, internal audit, extra. I'm a certified empanel certification auditor and a certification trainer also personally. But otherwise, as a company, we do the implementation, consulting, audit, etc. So, and the last but not the least is the 3 books written by me. Apart from the winners who will get the quiz winners, if you're not opted to try the quiz or not winning it, you can always purchase it and read it also. So it's all available in Amazon or in my website, Ft.JaganathanT. That is the website. It is available. Okay. So this is my LinkedIn profile. I also do every week Monday Musings newsletter in LinkedIn. Quite interesting. It's been done for last now 228 weeks. Has been consistently happening. Okay. So with that.
Jagan, we have one
Yes.
final query from a couple of participants. So I thought if you
Yes,
can
yes,
answer quickly their query.
I have
which
no
is there.
problem. As long as people are willing to stay, we can stay for one more hour also. I have no problem.
Yeah, the question
Yes,
is there a potential ISO certification that can encompass both a company and its affiliated subsidiaries? Or does it individual company require a separate ISO 27022 certification?
Good question. Very good question. Interesting question, because we also gone through that exercise. The certificate is for a legal entity. So if it is individual legal entities, though the shareholding is the same, that is what you are saying, subsidiaries. If it is a legally different entity, it has to be a different 27001 certification. Certification has to be different. But having said that, there is an option given in 27001. You can have the same process followed. That doesn't stop. Meaning, you can have the same set of documentation. You don't have to repeat that every. You can have the same process. You can have the same responsibilities. Your roles and responsibilities. Same set of people who are managing. All that is allowed. Okay. So practically, you can repeat it for all subsidiaries, and you can have one audit, but it will be individually audited for each subsidiary. But the effort, both from internal as well as the external certification audit effort, will be minimized because the process is the same, documentation is the same, roles and responsibilities is the same. It is allowed. That is possible. That's how, in fact, we have also done it. There are some companies we have suggested like that. That is allowed for your subsidiary company. But the auditing itself has to be different, meaning you have to have the scope individually defined for each company, though it is a subsidiary. Statement of applicability has to be individual for each company because each one is a separate certification. But the documentation can be the same, process can be the same, controls can be the same. Okay. Any other question? I have no problem. We in fact started on time and then stopped almost on time. Okay.
So there is one more.
Certification. Yes,
yes, sir. TISAC certification. Correct.
TISAC certification. Someone else also asked. It is to do with automobile, right? We have not done. Maybe we can take the person on. Check Vijay if we can take the person on audio. Someone else also asked. we are not done a TISAC certification, but I understand that TISAC is more closer aligned to ISO 27001. But TISAC's also expectation is that it has to be done, assessment has to be done by a vendor who has or agency who has a TISAC's affiliation. There is some which I have seen. So essentially, we can only help. We cannot give the certification. That is the right answer. Anyway, I can double check more. There was one query earlier. I remember that if it is to do with that automobile, Germany automobile certification, I know I have seen it. Yeah. Any other question, Vijay? Unfortunately, the person, is it answering your question? The name says unknown user, so difficult to take on voice. Is it failed to activate mic? Okay. Anybody else? Sir? Perumal, yes, Perumal. Okay. I'll take you on Perumal. I'll take on. Yeah, yes, Perumal. Enabled mic for you. You have a question, Perumal from Solvage. Mic is enabled. Okay. Perumal, are you there? Okay, sure. EL, can you last but not the least, it will help us. Can you paste the feedback form in the chat window?
Sure, sir. Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Please, I request you to enter your feedback, submit your feedback so that it will help us understand the response and also plan future sessions accordingly. Is the certification cost a single payment or do we need to make a double payment? I hope that it is for the two companies. Arun, we can, okay, so Arun, so that we can chat. Give me a second, Arun. EL, meanwhile, you can you paste the?
Yes, sir. I have already done. Yeah.
Oh, super. So, Arun Seturaman, can we take him on? Arun, who has asked that question? Vijay, can you take? Arun Shanmugavel, sorry. Arun Shanmugavel, I'll take on. Arun Shanmugavel, I'll take you on audio. And if you are okay, can take you on camera also. Since you're asking some interesting question, written a lot of. Okay, Arun.
Good evening.
Yes, Arun.
Is the certification cost is a single one or do we need to pay for double payment for companies and subsidiaries?
You mean there are two companies which are subsidiaries. One is subsidiary
One
to the
is
other
the
company.
main company, another is a subsidiary.
Yeah, yeah. So as I said, it has to be two separate certificates. It has to be two different scope documents. It has to be two different SYA. So the auditor will have to add certain additional effort because it will be two different scopes and the certificate will be two different certificates because it will be in the name of a company. But it is, they can say that the effort would be just another 15% extra or something like that. So the cost, you can do it together in a single session, both the companies. Essentially, though it will be two different certificates, cost could be some 20% extra or something. That's all. It won't be 200%. It won't be double the payment.
Okay, so I'm asking about certificate bodies.
Yeah,
certificate body conducting the audit, no?
Yeah, that is what I'm saying. You can ask a single session wherein both will be audited, both the companies will be audited. And if it is going to be, if we explain to them saying that it is the same process, same documentation, same set of ISMS resources who are handling both, then they will reduce the cost and then they'll make it instead of 2 times, they'll make it maybe, I don't know, maybe just additional 20%. They will have some calculations.
Got it. Got it.
Okay, it won't be double the payment.
Okay. Thank you.
If you want, reach out to us. I can connect you to some certification. We don't do the certification, but I'm an empanel certification auditor for some certification company. So I can connect you to some certification company where they do this.
Okay.
I have done such an audit. In fact, we have ourselves 2 companies are there, both are subsidiaries. One is the main feature cost and the other one, Perito, which is a subsidiary. So we've done for both the companies like that.
Okay. Thank you for your answering. Thank you.
Risk assessment scope and SOA alone has to be different. All other things can be the same. Okay, any other, you can separately reach out to me. I hope you have, I will share my email ID also in the chat window. You can note down. You can reach out to me. I can connect you to, if you are really into that stage, I can connect you to some certification auditing also. I'll share my number also if any case anybody wants to reach out to me. Okay, please share your feedback. It will be very helpful to us for planning. Feedback form, EL has shared the feedback form. This is the feedback form. So please share your valuable feedback. It will help us to understand the session and also plan future session. If you have something specific in mind like this, you want to know, you want to really get into some niche knowledge area. So we can plan and do that. Okay. Thank you. Any other question, Vijay, or shall we close it?
At this point, I'm not saying, sir. Let's wait for a minute before we close any sessions. Please put it in your chat window, please.
Okay. So we also shared our LinkedIn page. You can see it by 7 o'clock to know who is the winner. We'll just took a quick check. We just wanted to do a quick check before we just announce based on the database. So we'll do a quick check and then announce it by in another half an hour in the feedback. And your prices will reach out to you. We'll send it to you by courier. Okay. Thank you. So Vijay,
Yes, sir.
maybe you can formally thank and close the session. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks everybody for joining this session. I think it should have been a very informative session. And no, reach out to us for anything. You have the connects, you have the numbers. You can always reach out to the people for any query. We would be more than willing to assist you and help you out in guiding your requirement at any point of time. Okay, thank you.